Welcome back to the Work Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, George Lucas Pfeiffer, and on today's episode, we've got an incredibly special treat. Two guests here in the studio to talk about the logistics industry, high periods of growth and change throughout the last 15 months during the pandemic, and how to keep a people results-based culture alive and well. We're so excited to have Christina Bottis, who is the Chief Marketing Officer, and Carmen Smith, the Chief People Officer, here to talk about the balance between people and brand. Let's not waste another minute. Work Inspired starts right now. Carmen, Christina, thank you so much for being here. So excited to have our first dual guests in person on the show. This is going to be a great conversation. I really appreciate your time and your insight today.
Yeah, thanhanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah. So we like to start each episode by kind of getting to understand the career path, the professional story of our guest, to put things into context. So maybe, Carmen, starting with you, tell us how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in logistics, which is where I'm at today. I took a couple tours of logistics, and I started as an individual in sales, and then moved into human resources, where I started my career moving through various different departments of human resources, from recruiting to learning and development, leadership development, and eventually leading teams within human resources. I spent some time in energy as well as some time in real estate, and then I am back in logistics now with Coyote Logistics as the Chief People Officer.
And you've been with Coyote for just half a year?
Just over 4 months.
4 months. Yeah. So new to the team.
Not new to the industry, but new to Coyote.
Very cool.
And happy to be there.
Excellent. Christina, how about you?
I've been in B2B marketing for about 20 years, and most of that time was spent software companies, human capital, ironic enough, which is why Carmen and I can talk shop all the time, because she used all the tools I tried to sell her. But I'm new to the logistics industry. One of my grad school colleagues is one of our sales leaders. So here's how I ended up in supply chain and logistics. But yeah, I'm passionate about demonstrating how marketing is really a growth lever and not a party planning department.
Definitely. How long have you been with Coyote?
It'll be 3.5 years in about a month.
Okay, great. So let's talk about Coyote for a minute. It's a well-known brand, and especially here in Chicagoland, but obviously all over the place as well. Acquired by UPS. And I want to talk a little bit about the culture, and maybe we can talk about it from the Chief People Officer. What's the culture like at Coyote in the 4 months that you've been there, but also maybe historically what you know about it?
Yes. And I've been watching Coyote for a long time, so I'm fortunate to have seen their culture and competed against their culture. But the culture there, the way that I would describe it is, first and foremost, it's a very fun and energetic and performance-based organization. I would say that Coyote's culture is something that is very unique to them and really creates this workplace experience for employees to come to work and do their best work to be successful. We really live by our values, and that's very true throughout the employees that we hire, through the leaders that we have, and we make sure that that is something that resonates and shows up in people's work and day, every single day. I would say, just thinking about one of our values, we're in an environment where it's very much like you work really hard and you see the results from that, but you also get a lot of career progression from that. And it's part of our no excuses mentality, which is one of our values. And that, there's no excuses for our customers. There's no excuses for helping people get through their careers. And we're very focused on developing individuals so that they can move through the organization, try different things, and support them along the way.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm interested. Did you have? Because you saw Coyote from the outside in, as look from the competitive perspective. I'm interested to know what made you. Why did you want to come work for Coyote?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I wanted to come work for Coyote. I think the way that Coyote is innovating in the space is something that attracted me to the organization. I also think their people-first approach. So as a Chief People Officer, I want to see the way that Coyote is treating their people, right? And I can see that through the benefits, the perks, which isn't everything, but the culture, the way people support one another, the progression that people make through their careers, and seeing that from the outside and watching individuals move fast through their careers and have that support and really be successful is exciting to come on board as the chief people officer for an organization that does put people first.
Sure. From what you know, did the culture change at all? Has it changed over time, or when UPS acquired the company, was there a shift at all, or was there an adjustment period?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Coyote is experiencing a cultural evolution, is what I would say, right? You go from being a startup organization to now we're 15 years in business. So we're celebrating our 15th year this year. And thank you. And we are seeing an evolution because now we're bigger. We're a global organization. We aren't just in the United States. We are part of UPS. And so as a result of that, we have definitely seen an evolution. But we, at our core, are still the same Coyotes in that we still go back to our values and we still have these behaviors that are very true to our culture, and people still work very hard for our customers and our carriers to make sure that they can be successful in executing on their business needs as well. So those core things remain today, but I would say just as we get bigger and bigger, we have to make sure that we are extending and evolving our culture to have a bigger reach and to think more globally.
Gotcha.
I would add to that too, right? I mean, it's a culture that's enabled us to earn the trust of an industry over 15 years, right? And while that's evolved and how we demonstrate that now around the world, it's still at its core is how we deliver on promises we make to our customers. And for me, when we're talking about people, that potentially will come work at Coyote, I tell them all the time that this is a place where I can make a list of things to do and actually point to the things that we got done. I walk through the halls and I see things that we did, like that were a conversation, a PowerPoint slide, a to-do list item, right? And then there it is. And as a leader, but also as somebody who's just starting your career, to build something and see that come to fruition and see other people engage with it, there is no better joy. There's no greater joy or accomplishment. And not every place is able to do that, right? It means that the people in that organization have an appetite for change. They trust you to try something, and it might not go the way you thought, but you learn from it. And I think that's an important thing to note about our culture is you go fast, you learn quicker, and then you go do better over and over and over again, right? And that's, 15 years, we're going to do 15 more years doing just that, right? And that's the core and the evolution. That's never going to change.
That's cool because, that results based, that go quick, see results, make change happen. That is very much a startup, small kind of business capability. And when you move into a large global organization, especially the size of UPS, sometimes maybe that could be hindered, but it sounds like you guys have been able to maintain that culture at Coyote, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's about balance, right? It's about being able to do that and now thinking about how do we scale this around an entire world, right? Which may not have been the thing we thought of when we opened day one, right? I wasn't there day one, but having been in startup world, that's the first thing you do. It's storming and norming and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you've got all this success and now you're like, great, now how do I do this everywhere? And that's where we are. And that's a natural and exciting, part of our upcoming history.
Cool. Well, Christina, let's talk a little bit about high growth and fast change. So this podcast was started right as the pandemic started, and now we're in year 2, 2021, and hopefully moving out of it. But logistics was one industry that actually accelerated and grew during 2020. How was it for you as a chief marketing officer to kind of manage that change?
I think, let's be serious. I'm happy for our supply chain community that now supply chain is part of a strategic discussion on how businesses grow. And it probably always was, but nobody really gave it the credit it deserved. And now you can't turn on CNBC without somebody very high up being asked first and foremost, tell us about your supply chain health, right? That's a shift. And it's put the hard work of our customers and our network in the spotlight. And so one of the biggest things that we knew we had to do was over communicate, right? We have a privileged viewpoint of where stuff is, what's happening on the ground level, and what we heard. We were talking to our customers daily, hourly. Our employees were, right? Like we as the leadership team, we're talking to them every week, just trying to gauge like, what can we do differently right now during this time of crisis to help you plan when a plan isn't possible? And what it came down to was they told us, back to this idea of trust, is we trust you to give us the information that matters. Because in a time of change, in a time of crisis, there's almost, I mean, we all felt it. There was information overload at one point, and it was coming from all angles, and you didn't know what was important or what you should pay attention to. And for us to be able to be that grounding resource to our customer base to make a business decision, I mean, it enriches the relationship, but also demonstrates the expertise that, you know, a firm that's 15 years old, we've seen things never like this, but we've been in crisis before. Right. We can give you, you know, and that's, I know we'll talk about the, you know, the evolution of technology and human expertise. And it's like, that's where you want to talk to a person who said, you know, I've seen this before. Right. It's going to be okay. Here's what I'd recommend. That goes a long way. And that's really honestly how we supported our customers through a time when their businesses were changing, when our own business was changing, when we were all going remote, when we were trying this new virtual reality that we'd all like, video conferencing was talked about, but now it was the main way to communicate. So that, I mean, the growth hinged on communicating and listening and aligning what we are uniquely good at to the problems that they now uniquely had in a time of craziness.
Well, we'll definitely dive deeper into that because I do want to know, what does the future of the logistics industry look like? Yeah. But let's switch back over to Carmen for a second, because I want to stay a little bit internal to Coyote first and say, how are you guys projecting the future of the way you work at your organization? And then we'll talk about outside the organization and technology and all this. I'm very excited about those things myself.
And ironic enough, they're very closely related, right? Like one influences the other.
Exactly. So Carmen, what is the plan at Coyote? Did you guys, I mean, let's step back to 2020. Did you guys go fully remote? Did you stay kind of in a hybrid mode? Were you all in the office? What's this current situation and what's the plan?
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is to think about the journey that Coyote has been on to go from being fully in the office and having desktops at your desk to overnight being able to be fully remote and still service our customers and our carriers. And we have a lot of people to thank for that. Our tech teams, our people teams, all of our leaders and managers for making that happen. And I think what we realized during that time is that our culture was strong enough to carry us through this moment when we all had to go home and work from home offices and get laptops and help our clients through crisis, their own crisis and the crisis of the pandemic. So it was interesting to be able to see the organization shift and be able to do that and then continue to work in that fashion. And we've actually, just within the last 3 to 4 weeks, brought the majority of our workforce back into the office, working on a hybrid schedule. So what we've done right now is we've said, all right, our teams can come in on days when their teams are there together so that they can collaborate, because our culture is very collaborative. As I mentioned before, that learning and development piece is so important to us. And those are the moments that really help people understand how to solve crisis, because they can hear other people solving crises and then therefore learn and grow from that. So with that collaboration, we want to make sure that we're fostering that still, but giving people the flexibility to come in a couple days a week right now as we ease back into this. Sure. What the future looks like is something that we are still studying and trying to work out, right? Because we know that the future is more flexible for everyone. I think everybody has changed the way that they look at the way we work today, and having that flexibility is really important. It's a benefit to people, and it is something that makes people feel like they have an inclusive environment that supports them. And so we are looking at the ways in which we can continue to do that. Right now we're hybrid, and we're going to stay that way for a while, and we're going to keep monitoring it. We're talking to our employees, we're talking to our leadership teams and committees, and we'll make that final decision soon. But for now, we are staying as we are with this hybrid workforce.
Well, some companies are where you're at, but I'd say you're a little bit ahead of others who are maybe waiting until Labor Day to start the reentry. Well, how has it been? How has the last 3 to 4 weeks been when you've been
good?
Yeah,
so good. I mean, you take for granted how much joy just engaging candidly, right? Like you don't, and you also take for granted the amount of collaboration that happens outside of meetings. You know, we have an open layout, right? And you know, again, you're walking through the hallways, you see this person, that person, you stop, you have a chat. And I think that was one of the struggles for our group specifically in the pandemic was when you start to box things into meetings, there could be some conversation that you would overhear or you would, by osmosis kind of like chime in on. And it was that just like fabric of the collaborative culture that you couldn't schedule in a Zoom, right? And now it's back. And, we go through digital transformation and you talk about that a lot. I talk about that a lot, and even pre-pandemic, it's like, well, automate everything. That's the answer to everything. Yeah. And what we're seeing is like, what it does is it validates the fact that, yes, automating some things, very critical, smart, do that. But the human component of having face-to-face interaction can never be replaced, and it has to have a place in the workplace. It might not be that same physical workplace, but that piece of interaction is critical to business and to a culture for sure.
Yeah, we completely agree. And obviously I'm a big proponent of technology and digital myself. Yeah. And it's amazing what it can do, and it's coming, and it's going to get more and more. I mean, obviously 2020 accelerated its use, but it's very hard to take away sitting down with a person, looking at them where there's no screen between you, no distraction. Well, some distractions, but good ones, right? And it's just different. And so we are talking to a lot of organizations that are saying we recognize that both are important, right? Maybe there was a lot of companies before the pandemic that were only in person, and now there's some that are touting we're going to be only remote, but I think maybe the successful recipe for a lot of organizations is somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And that was going to be a follow-up question I had for you is, as you approach, as you work through this hybrid model, have you kind of kept your same floor plate, which before sounded like it was very assigned, where each person had a dedicated space? Have you kind of moved to more of an unassigned, or are you highlighting collaborative areas, social spaces to kind of encourage these interactions? How are you handling that when you don't have everybody in at the same time?
Yeah, we're doing a little bit of all of that. Okay. And I think that then targets what everybody's needs are. We have some areas that will be, people know that they're going to go there. We do like to keep our teams together because they are working so collaboratively together. So they'll have areas. We have collaborative workspaces throughout the office where people could go sit on a couch if they wanted to, or they could go talk over the ping pong table. We have a lot of different spaces for people to innovate and collaborate. And then we've also talked about desk hoteling as well. And so some of our teams will choose that option as well. And we'll just do a combination of it all. We're really here to serve the people and try to make it the most comfortable space for them. And so we want to have a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I also love that you mentioned the learning part. Yeah. Because a lot of companies have said we can do the work remotely, but I think what hasn't been discussed that much is, are people growing in their careers at the same rate? Are they learning from their colleagues? Because if you have to schedule that, that's right. Of course, initiatives can be put in place digitally to do that. Yeah. But the being able to look over someone's shoulder, ask a quick question. It's like having professionals right next door as opposed to having to hire somebody to come in. And so that's very cool that you guys have already started to see that. Let's talk a little bit more about the technology piece. Sure. And the ability to kind of line up technology and people. I love the fact that I've got both of you sitting on either side of me because you've got the people, almost like the internal way of communicating, and then you've got marketing, which they're very connected, especially when you think about your culture and your people, but also when you think about your brand and the way that you serve your clients and your industry and the future of your company, right? So how are you guys kind of balancing those?
Our people are the reason we can deliver on what we say in the market, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. I tend to, and this is where some of our thought leadership and research has come from, is we seek to leverage technology in a way that can amplify the impact of a person, right? So it's not one or the other. It's how do we set everybody up for success? And the tech does the stuff that the tech does better than anything else, like data entry and mining for, watching for patterns and data and AI and things that, at warp speed, I would like the robot to do that. And then what usually happens, right, is people buy a lot of software systems. I've got years of experience going through and talking to customers about, I bought this piece of software, how come all my problems aren't solved? And the difference between being able to mine through a lot of data is who then is taking that and turning that into actionable takeaways. More importantly is who is making the decision of, how will this impact my team? How will this impact my company, my customers? That is 100% a soft skill that will become more and more important as the world continues to evolve this way. And ironic enough, right? Something that we're going through as an organization and think about and how we man our teams and the tools that they use, but also our customers. When you think about, the supply chain industry is going through digital transformation. Right. What used to be, totally manual, paper-based, file-based. Now people are investing in transportation management systems. And how do they use that? Who's going to man that? How does it integrate? What is integration? Why do I have to talk to my technology department all the time? And this is a natural evolution of the digital transformation. But that's what we're talking to them about all the time is, and helping them again, because we have this unique perspective, we can help them with, here are the things that probably make sense. If you're going to go buy tech, start here, right? And keep your people focused on the problem solving, the escalations, the strategy and the plan and the analysis, and arm them with tools so they can go faster, right? Could they gather data? Sure. Is that what you want them really doing? No, amplify their impact by doing that. So we actually did a study. It's an annual study now that we continue to do, again, as the industry goes through transformation. It's called Tech and Humanity. It's actually launching this week on our website, coyote.com. So what we found is the industry itself says, generally speaking, last year it was 60-40. 60% just automate all that stuff. And the 40% that's like strategic, analytic, problem solving, we want like an expert to help us. When something goes wrong, people look for the customer service number, right? They don't want to fill out a form for a case number. Right. So ironic enough, this year we skewed a little bit more personal, right? We saw that go to 57-43. Wow. I mean, and you could argue, if faced with an only digital world, people are craving somebody to just talk to and help them with their problem. And so, it's something that we think about all the time when we're developing product and solutions are, what are the problems you have and what's the combination of tech and expertise that we as Coyote can bring to the table. And, as an industry that's evolving, there's a lot of things at play. There's evolving skills gaps and driver shortages and spending on software and new things that, a chief supply chain officer never needed to think about. How do I coordinate with the CIO to make sure my software gets implemented this year, right? And that's a very real thing. Right. So it's that dynamic. It plays out in so many ways that we never really anticipated when we started doing this research. And every time we talk to somebody, it ends up coming up. And, the 60-40 rule has become, to the success of the marketing department, something that we talk about a lot.
Cool. When you think about, first of all, one of the reasons why your industry had shifted quite a bit, I think, last year was this massive push into the e-commerce side of things. So when I think about technology versus digital versus person, one example I like to use is e-commerce versus feet on the street traditional sales, right? A relationship-based sales model is you meet with the person, I'm your account rep, you can come to me for anything, and we might go golfing or go to dinner or drinks. So we get this personal relationship, right? You switch over to e-commerce, and it's way more product specific. Yes, I might look at people's reviews, but my peers maybe, and it's very impersonal, where you're basically just on the website. So when I think about how people in an organization that's making a change from traditional sales, feet on the street sales to an e-commerce model, it seems like a lot of those roles would change more into, like you said, a customer service perspective. Are you seeing in your industry, though, that your customers are still wanting, not just for customer service, but they're still wanting to say, for certain things, like you said, I want an expert, I want a consultant, I don't want to be going through a bunch of web pages and trying to figure it out myself, or even, as we look at the rise of automated intelligence, where do you see kind of like your technology versus people balance playing out as e-commerce continues to accelerate?
I think what you just said is the inherent problem, and that's why we don't think about it as one versus the other, right? You put the customer at the core. There are going to be times when for a customer it's appropriate to go to the website, check out, order, go. And that's the experience they want at that point in their journey for that person, for that product at that time. And at some point they want to talk to a customer, or they may not know what they need. So they want advice before they put together a consideration set. And so what we're really, we have an e-commerce platform. Coyote Go is our digital marketplace. And our approach to it is, it's not about one or the other. Mm-hmm. It's about understanding that the customer is going to choose their journey. Mm-hmm. And our job is to understand which types of paths they want to take to engage with us, and to ensure that, as you said, that their engagement with our brand is personal no matter where they go, which is not easy, right? It's an integration and an amalgamation of an incredible amount of insight and data. But that's when you put the customer at the center of all of it. It's less about which path did they go, and the question is, did we get them what they needed? Mm-hmm. How they wanted it, mm-hmm. where they wanted it, when they wanted it. And if the answer is yes, great, right?
Very wise, because it's part about understanding the customer journey. Absolutely. And listening and gathering feedback, but it's also to some extent, like you said, about choice, which is very relevant to what you're providing in the workplace now, right? Yeah. To some extent with the hybrid options and just, saying we are in a period of change. Mm-hmm. We don't know, we can't say we know exactly what they need at exactly what point. And we can try, but also putting in some flexibility, some level of choice into the equation, I think is really, really smart. Carmen, you were hired during the remote period, right? And as
a champ.
Yeah.
Yes, what a champ.
Well, as a chief people officer, this is a great opportunity to ask the question, how did that go? Yeah. And then also, what advice do you have as companies continue to try to potentially onboard new team members where it's this new world? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'd say one thing that Coyote does really well is their onboarding, and we were able to shift the onboarding to a full remote situation so that people could have the experiences and learn the things they needed to learn about Coyote in a virtual world. And so fortunate for that, but still when you're starting in I'm not in a new entry level position, right? So starting during the pandemic requires that you have to lean on your teammates to find out who you need to be meeting. And it's all about a series of uncovering who the right people are to connect with so that you can get the wherewithal in terms of what you need to be doing and what has been done and what the priorities are. And so I think, my advice to other companies that are doing this virtually is to have a prepared onboarding program that at least introduces people to the culture. The one thing that's easy about walking into an office is that you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can hear it. In the virtual world, that's not necessarily the case. And so finding some way to bring that to those individuals through a virtual first day or virtual week to immerse them in the culture is really key to helping them feel like they're bought into the experience that they're about to have. And then, it's funny that I'm sitting here with Christina because this was one thing she said to me. She, day one, she was like, I'm going to be your buddy. So let me know how I can take you along the way. And ever since then, she was my buddy in taking me through my onboarding in terms of making sure that I was meeting the right people and understood the things I needed to understand to be successful in my role. So assigning a buddy, a mentor, some other sort of onboarding partner, I think is really key to making that experience great for a new hire so that they're not sitting there with dead space when they don't have a Zoom meeting. That only lasted for a day.
We hired a few on the marketing team. We hired a few people during the pandemic, right? And who we'd never met. And we went through the onboarding and I'll never forget one of the new hires said, it's kind of weird to IM someone you've never met and be like, hi, like I'm new. And I think the buddy thing helps with that because you're awkward. You don't know your way around things. And now it's like systems. It's not even I'm lost in the halls anymore. It's like, I don't know where to log in. Yeah. I don't know what my password is, right? And I don't want to ask my boss something that seems super obvious, like someone help me. I've been so fascinated by some of the things that, again, when everything moves to a virtual world, the new things that are the stress engagements, and they're like, I don't want to IM you. It's so weird. I'm sorry. And you're like, what's the problem? Just IM them. So it's been, people who onboarded during the pandemic, Carmen included. I mean, it's really a valiant effort. Yeah. And I think the people team has done such a great job making that a seamless transition. Mm-hmm. We still hear that the training classes, it's like a little family. Every time they kind of get released out into the world, right? They're like, oh, so-and-so is in my training class. And even if you get on a Zoom call, you see a name, you're like, oh, I got a buddy.
Yeah, I've seen that person's dog and baby. And bedroom
right,
before.
exactly. I know their style. Yeah, exactly.
Was it extra special or unique for you to, when you came back into when you entered the workplace for the first time? Because you had been working at the company, but had actually not really ever met the people outside of a digital screen. How was that?
Yes, I mean, it was great and it has been great. And I'm still exploring, right? Everything from our office spaces and just exploring what the experience is like for employees coming in and stopping by people's desks. And I am definitely that girl right now who's walking around asking for new friends, right? Hello, my name is, just stop and shake people's hands now that they're back in the office. So it's great to be able to now meet with people face to face and people who I've met on Zoom. It's so different when you meet them in person for the first time. Yeah.
Somebody told me yesterday, they were like, I thought you were like really tall.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, and I get the opposite.
No.
They're like, I can't believe how tall you are.
We're literally opposite height. They're like, oh, really? It's just so funny. I mean, I will give Carmen, so we had first time ever company kickoff digitally, total virtual world. Carmen was 3 weeks on the job and we got her on a stage talking. I mean, I think what I was so enamored with was her ability to go outside of her comfort zone really quickly. And I think that's true for anybody who's starting in a virtual. It's like, not only are you new, but you're also doing this in a never before seen type of existence. Right. So there's going to be a lot of that, like, oh, this is not, I don't know if I could do this. Yeah. But, I mean, because she did, it's a testament to them. I mean, she's just more great relationships in a short time. And with that barrier, I think that's the biggest piece of advice to anybody who's doing this totally virtually.
Cool. The one thing that I think we're all recognizing now is that a lot of innovation happened last year, whether it was in our onboarding processes or the software applications, company-wide, industry-wide. As you look at kind of what happened over the last 15 months, what would you say are some of the key innovations that we'll take away with from?
For our shippers and our carriers, I think this is the story you've heard over and over again is digital transformation was basically accelerated 10 years or something obscene like that. It was a McKinsey report. And, that's what we saw as adoption on our platforms grew. They certainly, we just launched them 2 years ago and we saw steady growth, but then all of a sudden, right, February of 2020, March of 2020, it was one of the main ways to engage with us. And so, I think anytime my mom is using a digital anything, we've gone mainstream. Yeah. That's usually my barometer. And so similar types of personas, right, that had maybe been slow to adopt, we're now open to it because of the circumstances. And, you try something new and it surprises you. And so now we've got folks who are leveraging, again, not one or the other, but they know that they now have more options to engage with us than ever before. And they're experiencing a level of Coyote that they'd never seen because you get different things from a digital platform, right? And insights and data. And then, working with your rep and working with the teams. So, I would say that the experience of the total value that Coyote can bring to both a customer and a carrier was ironic enough heightened because they were able to now leverage our full portfolio instead of, what they knew and trusted. Now they kind of, were experiencing new things.
Sure. Do you see, obviously the pandemic impacted different countries in different ways. So there was a global impact. And now that you guys are a global organization, do you see any lasting change or innovation around how we source materials and how we, logistics between different countries? I know that that's one of the big constant problems now is all these backups due to restrictions or issues happening abroad?
Yeah,
that's a loaded question. I know
it's definitely loaded. And it's basically a snowball of everything, right? And you've got right now we've got a lot of legislation and things to your point about how does freight move. Right. that's a age-old question on how do we regulate that. Certainly in Europe, the ports and how things have flown with Brexit. I mean, we've got a lot of things that were at play even before the pandemic that just, blew up with this new challenge. What I will say is, we work with, we've got a customer advisory board and the Coyote Collective, which brings together sort of industry heads to talk about these bigger industry problems, right? Like right now, driver shortage. Right. We've got more demand than ever for stuff to be moved, and we need people to drive the trucks to move it. And it was a problem before the pandemic, and now it's obviously even more painful. So how do we bring people together to start to think about, okay, so how do we correct this problem for the long term, right? And a lot of this process, right? We've got some task force for contactless, like warehouse processes. So it's almost, again, it's this idea of speeding up adoption of probably things that were being talked about in a beta program somewhere, in an innovation hub somewhere, and now you're seeing them at scale and seeing the benefits really quickly because the change management wasn't at play. It was just change. There was no management. It was just change. So I think the industry is really enjoying some of those digital sort of improvements to process of what, again, was already at play. But some of the bigger like industry challenges, I think it's heightened the urgency of what was once thought as someone else's problem to now be something that a CEO is concerned about, right? Which is great for our customers because we know that business strategy has to be supported by a supply chain strategy and how you get your goods to your customers. Yeah,
like you said, it's being talked about on almost every exactly. Yes. Well, I think we're certainly primed for continued change and innovation. So I just want to say congratulations on being able to maintain the culture you have, to experience the growth that you have, and to be hired remotely, and join such a great company. Yeah. I'd like to finish off by just asking you guys a couple personal questions professionally. The first being, resource. What's a good resource that's been valuable to you in your careers that you would recommend to others? Yeah, I think for me, I am in a women's networking group called Chief that has been a really valuable resource for me. It's a great place for me to connect with people that are in HR, but also people that are in finance and marketing and various different industries. And it's been really helpful to me, not only from who they bring forward as speakers, but also from the networking and connections. Networking is, for me, it is the way that I learn, right? It's critical for getting new ideas and creating innovation. And so that is a platform to network. So it doesn't need to be that one, but I would say identifying a platform is really beneficial. And I know Christina has some similar experiences with some networking groups that she's in. Not to double up on that answer, but I used to dread, when people said, oh, come to this networking event, I'd be like, busy. But I owe this job to my network, right? Because I was referred by a colleague. And so what I've been really lucky, again, most of my career was spent in Chicago. So I have a network of past colleagues and work wives and work husbands that I would say to anybody trying to think about where their next step is to manage those relationships and don't forget them, right? And to foster, I have a number of really good friends that are great at managing that, right? And really good at going to dinner, grabbing coffee, and now certainly, right, we can do that again. Yeah. So I would encourage that. Maybe it's still a little scary to just cold call network and do that. Start with the people that you know and keep in touch with them, even if it's dropping them an email or a note, like a handwritten note. Yeah. I know that sounds crazy, but I've been incredibly fortunate to now kind of look back and feel like I have this little family that, we share in each other's successes. We think of each other if we see good roles, and we are each other's cheering squad. So, that's really made an incredible difference for me. Yeah. It's amazing how we've talked to a lot of leaders from a lot of organizations on this show, and network is consistently one of the, and Chief has been mentioned before as well. Oh, so So thank you for that advice. Yeah. Let's talk about leadership. You guys are both in leadership roles. Yes. What are some effective qualities that you've seen that are consistent across great leaders? So the leaders that I've had and have that I admire are those who are
the same person in work and outside, outside and inside of work. And I think, I've shared this story before where I grew up thinking like, well, you have your work self and then you have your personal self. And the quicker, the leaders that really, and we're seeing this, right, that are authentic, you can't connect by feeling like you have this work Barbie and fun Barbie. And that was really, I think, when I first became a manager, what I was missing. And then I finally started to realize that if I shared a little bit of my story or the share that, hey, sometimes I'm not really sure what to do either, people can grab onto that and feel like not only that you're connecting because they feel the same thing, but they also have the ability to one day be a leader because they don't have it all together all the time either.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It humanizes it. Absolutely. I would say adding on to that, the authenticity is very important, but also curiosity. I think that what I've experienced with good leaders is that they're always curious. They're asking the right questions and they're out there looking for different answers, different ways to do things, ways to innovate. And through asking questions even of their own team, they fall more into a coach than a boss just by asking questions. And so if you remain curious, I think you can always look at things a little bit differently and innovate.
It's great advice. Final question.
Yeah.
If you were both retiring tomorrow, which seems way too soon for each of you, but what's a morsel of wisdom you'd leave behind to a mentee or just to someone on your team?
Know when to say you don't know the answer.
Very good.
That's good. Yeah. I would say know and write down what your vision is so that you can create the path to get there.
I love that. Very succinct and very, very important. Two great pieces of advice. Well, that wraps up this conversation. It has been such a joy. You guys are super inspiring, very fitting to the name of this show. I can't thank you enough for coming in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.